Hey everybody, so today I wanted to talk about something that a lot of you probably actually don't know, which is bigger muscles doesn't necessarily mean stronger. The reason I want to talk about this is because I've heard this common misconception. I've heard it from my mom, I've heard it from a lot of other women especially, and they'll see a guy with huge muscles walk by and they'll automatically assume that he's stronger than the guy with maybe more average muscles. And I've trained both these types of men, and that's not necessarily true. And the reason is training for muscle size is completely different than training for muscle strength. I've actually come across this myself as well, because some people maybe didn't want to hire me as a trainer because they said I'm too small. And once they saw how much I could actually lift or how strong I actually was, they realized their mistake in thinking that. And a lot of women or a lot of people will say I'm small, so I'm not strong, which isn't true, because training for muscle strength is completely different than training for muscle size. So nothing against people who train for muscle size, which is muscle hypertrophy, and that comes more along the lines of bodybuilders and people who want themselves to look very muscular. And they do this, maybe they just like the aesthetics that it gives their bodies, and it's a very popular way of training right now. And but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're stronger. The reason is when you're training for muscle hypertrophy, you're only training at about 60 to 80% of your 1 rep max of whatever exercise that is. So 1 rep max is, say you're doing a bench press, the absolute heaviest weight you could go, say it's 200 pounds, you would only train at 60 to 80% of your 1 rep max, and you would do 6 to 12 sets of that. Whereas if you were training for strength to get stronger, you would train at about 80 to 90% of your 1 rep max, and you would do 1 to 5 reps. So that's why training for muscle size and strength is completely different. Another way that muscle size and strength is different in training is because muscle size relies more on diet and more on the looks of the muscles when they're being torn down. So for example, have you ever noticed when you're working out and when you get done with a workout, your muscles look a lot bigger than they do if, like right after the workout, than they do a couple hours later, because there's fluid and blood rushing to those muscles to heal them. So hypertrophy relies more on the muscle healing process to make your muscles look big, whereas muscle strength relies more on neural adaptations, which is, say you do an exercise a couple times like a squat and you're not used to it, but over time your body knows how to do the squat, so it becomes more efficient at being able to do the squat, because it relies more on muscle memory than it does muscle repair. The other way that muscle strength and muscle size is different in training is because strength initially is a lot easier to train short term. You could almost double your strength, like if you're a newbie or a noob, in like the first couple weeks, maybe in the first month, you could almost double your strength. Whereas hypertrophy relies more on nutrition, like I said, and relies more on just dedication of doing the workouts over time. So your body, have you ever noticed, like, you do an exercise for a long period of time and maybe you haven't done it in a couple months and your body automatically remembers how to do it? That's because muscle strength relies on neural adaptation. So when you get older and you're used to doing an exercise a lot, it's easier to do an exercise because your body kind of remembers how to do it. That's why they call it like old man strength and things like that, because the older man or the older woman has done this exercise so many times, the body doesn't have to fire as many of the muscle synapses to be able to do the exercise, because the body remembers the most efficient way on how to do it. So I just wanted to get this straight in the video on the difference between muscle strength and hypertrophy. I just wanted to let you all know that the guy or the girl with the biggest muscles doesn't mean that the guy or the girl is the strongest. at all, because if you notice, strongman competition, the body type of strongman men in strongman competition is completely different than the body type of a bodybuilder in a bodybuilding competition. So strength and muscle size does not come hand in hand. Obviously, you're going to get bigger when you're training for strength, but it's not going to look the same as like the Arnold body or whatever. So don't get that confused. And next time you see a guy who doesn't have the huge muscles, don't mistake him for someone who is not necessarily strong. You never know, they might be able to just lift something up, and you'll be really surprised if you take that misconception out of your brain. So hopefully this was an educational video for you, and enjoy.